Hey, what's up, YouTube? It's Richie from Boston. It's the 14th of March, 2017, and we are getting chemical snowed on like you read about in Chemical Snow magazine. But I digress. This is curious, to say the least. 1960 study was done a long time ago to see how far people would go to, if somebody in authority was wearing a white lab coat, how far would people go? Would they listen to anything this person in a white lab coat said? And the results were shocking, no pun intended. This was a test that they did seriously back in the 1960s to see how far people would go with other people. How bad would you torture another human being if told to by someone wearing a lab coat or claiming authority, like somebody wearing a badge? And it's pretty frightening how far they went, and it's even more frightening that they're revisiting it.
In social psychology that seem to provide a clue to this question. The problem I wanted to study was a little different. It went a little bit further. It was the issue of authority. Under what conditions would a person obey authority who commanded actions that went against conscience? These are exactly the questions that I wanted to investigate at Yale University. It is May 1962. An experiment is being conducted in the Elegant Interaction Laboratory at Yale.
Now remember where it's being held right now. Yale? Sound familiar? Exactly.
It is May 1962. An experiment is being conducted in the Elegant Interaction Laboratory at Yale University. The subjects are 40 males between the ages of 20 and 50 residing in the greater New Haven area.
Psychologists have developed several theories to explain how people learn. One theory is that people learn things correctly whenever they get punished for making a mistake.
40 years later, Milgram's infamous experiment, obedience, is still taught in classrooms around the world.
All right, teacher, would you take the test and be seated in front of the shock generator, please, in the next room?
But the experiment was rigged.
The victim was an accomplice of the experiment. The victim, according to plan, provided many wrong answers. His verbal responses were standardized on tape, and each protest was coordinated to a particular voltage level on the shock generator. Now, as teacher, you were seated in front of this impressive-looking instrument, the shock generator. Its essential feature is a line of switches that goes from 15 volts to 450 volts, and a set of verbal designations that goes from slight shock to moderate shock, strong shock, very strong shock, intense shock, extreme intensity shock, and finally XXX, danger severe shock. Your job, the experimenter explains to you, is to pair test. If he gets each answer correctly, fine, you move on to the next pair. But if he makes a mistake, you were instructed to give him an electric shock, starting with 15 volts, and you increase the shock.
I have to interject real quick. Check out that beard, huh? Kind of Amish looking, right? At any rate.
Each era.
That is incorrect. This one will be 195 volts.
The learner was hidden from the teacher by a partition.
Dance.
Of course, this was all a simulation. Nothing was really happening. But the learner made very convincing sounds of pain as the shocks increased.
This will be at 3:30.
And Milgram found, surprisingly and rather horrifyingly, that the majority of people would actually go right to the very highest level if there was some pressure from.
So long story short, back in the 60s, they did testing to see if people were stupid enough to believe whatever an authority figure, someone with a lab coat, somebody with a clipboard, told them to. Would you electrocute somebody that you couldn't see if you were told to? Not forced to. Nobody had a gun to their head. They were simply pressured. And it seems like we're living in that exact society today, i.e. chemtrails, i.e. 9/11, i.e. anything that requires thinking. People automatically and instantly go along with the authorities, the powers that be, except for us, it seems. And the reason I'm showing you this is because they're reviving it. It's all coming back. And I find it really humorous that they have to actually call it a study because they're already doing it. It goes on all around us right now. People will do the stupidest things if they believe that the authorities want them to do it. People don't seem to understand that we all have authority over ourselves. We've simply handed it over to a government that we duly elected, which is ridiculous because those people have taken they've taken the electoral process away from us. It's totally ridiculous. But apparently this intense experimenting is coming back. It's all going to come back again. So it looks like they're just trying to see how they can get the rest of the mice to run through the maze, because some of us are bad mice. At any rate, if you want to continue reading all this garbage, I'll leave the links in the description. But it's funny how history keeps repeating itself over and over and over again. It seems like the 50s and 60s, right after World War II, is when they really turned it up a notch, no pun intended, with the drugs, the music, and everything else. And it seems like we are the result of all that. And it doesn't look too good for humanity, in my opinion. Richie from Boston, I am out. Like, share, subscribe, or don't.